favorite things in the whole wonderful book. Richard Ford wrote that the distinguishing mark of literary greatness remains a fresh, sentence-level flair and a rigorous focus on the story at hand. With this biography memoir, Thomas Beller has done exactly that.
I'm very grateful to get this, and it's such a generosity on the part of the library, this magnificent place. And if I may, I want to thank a few people and make a couple of remarks. First, I want to address to Ted, my fellow recipient, that this sixth borough of the city, I feel, has been already designated. It's New Orleans, Louisiana. That's a personal opinion. Very unpopular in New Orleans, but I don't shy away from sharing it. Another thing I want to mention is that, Ellen, it's very interesting to hear your anecdote about your science paper, and that you were, benefited from this resource, this library. And I had to think immediately of my ninth grade science paper, which took place, the research I should say, in Mid-Manhattan Library, which you may know in comparison to this institution is sort of Port Authority. What went wrong is only my fault. But I do want to say that things did go wrong. I somehow got it into my head that I would take notes on this, something about a dinosaur in National Geographic, and I carefully numbered all these index cards and then went home and typed them all up in the same order, which Dr. Shostak, my science teacher, thought they seemed to resemble the article I was taking notes on. But I allowed myself that because the author I was asked to write about is someone who was really preoccupied with childhood in his own writing, and who made use of personal catastrophes, both sort of comic and more serious. And inevitably, I started to think about my own experiences juxtaposed against his, and there was some tension about how much I should let of my own life into this book. It seemed a bit unseemly to do so, although that turned out not to be an inhibiting factor. If I may, in a kind of like Academy Award sort of way, just rattle off some names that I wrote down, because many people were remarkably, how many pockets do I have to look at? Helpful, supportive in this. So, just to go quickly down a list, and by helpful and supportive, I mean to talk to me. Adrian Benepe, Roger Bellin, Nick Perufo, Nancy Franklin, Dottie Lebrano, Roger Angel. Special mention to Jonathan Ames. I did a lot of research in Princeton, and Ames had gone to Princeton at one point in a state of distress. I got on the phone with him on the train in Princeton, and we spoke all the way to the tunnel into Manhattan. It was kind of beautiful. It was dusk. Jonathan was incredible, taking phone calls at all times. Also important to mention is Ed Park, the editor at Amazon, who oversaw this, my agent Mary Evans, my beautiful wife Elizabeth, who was extremely supportive and allowed me to just disappear and survived my own expressions of anxiety as the book was being written. But the person I want to focus on most closely is my editor, James Atlas. There's a sort of reference to a comic situation in the book, which I'm probably giving away too much, but I talk about having been given this precious manuscript, this special book that no one had ever seen. It wasn't in the end published, it was pulped, but here was a rare specimen. And in my book, I discussed that there's a terrible setback when I lost this special thing. What I don't go into is that the special thing that I lost had belonged to my editor, James Atlas. So this kind of set me back in the beginning of my book, and I finally had this epiphany that having lost this special thing was actually an indication of all the resistance I had to the project, and that the resistance might be interesting as a subject. And I actually wrote this all in, I thought, a very expressive letter that was a breakthrough moment for me, which I sent by email right before getting on a plane. And then I landed and checked my voicemail to hear my editor, James Atlas, saying, let's just cancel the whole thing. So I called him up and I said, well, no, wait one moment. And the amazing thing is that wasn't the last proposal of cancellation. But this is now time to really acknowledge this incredible act of patience, artistic, editorial artistry, tolerance, not consistent, but that James Atlas bestowed upon me in editing this book. And I want to share two brief anecdotes to end it. Such is the nature of these things that by the time we finished, some time had gone by, and I wrote him a note saying, I miss our crises. And he wrote me back, just wait. And the other thing I want to share is from a cab ride over here. So in addition to writing about childhood in his fiction, the issue of his own childhood was a big deal with Salinger. And that's a big part of my book. And as has been mentioned, my childhood sort of topographically overlapped a bit. So I do generally believe that one shouldn't share anecdotes before you write them down, because then somehow it gets in the way of the composition process. You kind of give it away. But this ethic of mine has now been challenged by the fact that I'm going to forget it anyway. So I want to tell you this exchange I had with my mother in the taxi over here. I said, Mom, I think this tie might be my dad's tie. And I showed it to her, and I said, yeah, I think it might be. And I said, well, I might be wrong. And she goes, you might be right.